Are managers the easiest role to automate right now? Well, that's what Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, said, but I don't agree with that. I think it's a misunderstanding of the role of managers and the potential of managers when they really step into their role as leaders that makes them indispensable. I worked on the HoloLens team at Microsoft. Rob didn't manage the day-to-day of his engineering tasks, but he would set the vision for the team. He was working as a cross-functional communicator, removing the bottlenecks, influencing stakeholders and saying, hey, we have this deadline, we don't have enough resources here. So none of those things can be automated. The leadership, the hard skills that we bring as managers, as leaders, to make sure our team members understand what they are doing. That's why I'm going to start to talk about this on the podcast all the time so that you feel equipped. You have the new tools you need. You have literally the new Manager Playbook for dealing with all of this technology. Are managers the easiest role to automate right now? Well, that's what Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, said in a recent episode of the All In podcast, that managers are the easiest role to automate. And he has been looking for ways to automate managers for years. But I don't agree with that, right? I think it's a misunderstanding of the role of managers and the potential of managers when they really step into their role as leaders that makes them indispensable. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Lia Garvin, and this is the new Manager Playbook, where I break down the ins and outs of being a manager, and now especially in the context of bringing AI into our workflows. We're going to be talking about that more and more on the show, right? How to understand where AI fits with being a leader, when to use it appropriately, and when it doesn't make so much sense. Okay, so I could not be more excited to be talking about this because it's bringing in a lot of my background from working at Google, Apple, Microsoft, really in some of the earlier days of the evolution of the digital assistants and figuring out, what appropriate use cases there are for AI. And now, as it's kind of running full steam ahead, it's a moment for us all to think about as leaders. Well, when is it making sense to adopt some of these tools? And when is it really, we still want to have the human interactions and really do that skill building there? So that is something that I want us to really be thinking about. We all should be learning about AI on a day-to-day basis, okay? If we're not learning about AI and how it impacts our industry, we're actually completely missing the point as leaders. That's part of our job now, to understand this new technology. It's not even that new, right? This technology and how it's impacting us. Because if we don't understand it, we're going to be left behind. But it doesn't mean just jumping on the bandwagon and getting rin of all our employees, okay? And you can guess that that's what I'm going to be talking about and beating the drum about on this show all the time. And so when I heard this clip of Sergey Brin saying this, well, first thing was I thought back to early days of Google. This is, I don't know how long they've been around, 20, 25 years, maybe more, where Google was one of the first companies that actually tried to get rid of middle managers. They thought they weren't necessary, they just slow things down, and it didn't work. It was a complete disaster because the reality is people don't just self-organize. And this was long before automations, but it's something that's been in the back of the mind, kind of in this mindset, I think, from the engineering workflows. Because with engineering type work, you can set a task queue and assign it and have auto approvals. A lot of that actually already is automated. And so I want us to really discern when we're thinking about what we want to automate and not. It's not just everything, it's certain kinds of functions, right? So that's why I hear this and I'm like, dude, you're looking at management as it's just assigning a bunch of tasks in a queue, auto approvals and whatever, clicking timesheets. Well, yeah, that can be automated, but that's not the role of a manager, right? And that's not what we talk about in the new Manager Playbook. A manager is a leader. It is someone that enables better results from their teams, that empowers them, that motivates people, that helps kind of look across, well, where is this person best situated and what could that person be doing? That is what a manager's for. So sure, if you are just literally dragging and dropping tasks into a task list, into a ClickUp, an Asana, a workflow, a Jira, whatever, then, that can be automated. So let's automate that part and save your energy, save your capacity for what it really means to be a manager. Now, I want to share an example from engineering because this is a place that management is being automated very, very quickly. And I think back to when I worked on the HoloLens team at Microsoft. And this this is one of the most incredible, fantastic engineering managers I've ever worked with. His name was Rob. Rob, if you're listening, shout out to you and your genius. And why was Rob incredible? Well, Rob didn't manage the day-to-day of his engineering tasks. Okay, that was already handled because they already we would do sprint planning and things like that. But he would set the vision for the team. Rob was also a partner working with the product leadership, the design leadership, the marketing to see, hey, how are we all communicating across and understanding where is the vision of the HoloLens product and where are we going with it? And how is every sprint that we're planning? How is every milestone leading into that? So he was working as a cross-functional communicator, understander, really removing the bottlenecks that were happening in engineering. So that was something that we really can't replace with AI because he was having conversations. He was also influencing stakeholders and saying, hey, we have this deadline. We don't have enough resources here. Where can we shift things? Where can we prioritize the different features that we want to launch? And where does it make sense? He would then be sitting down with design leadership when we would have something come out in the product. So we would, create a piece of the product. We'd look at it in the headset and then we would iterate and make changes and resolve issues. He would sit down hand in hand with the headset on, the design leader and him, and they'd look at it and say, hey, what's a better way to do this? How many engineering hours is that going to take? Where does that fit within the schedule? How can we adjust things? This is what he was doing. Okay, so none of those things can be automated. And the things that Sergey Brin says can be automated, he already had that automated, and this was 10 years ago, right? So I just want to clarify that there's a lot of stuff we can automate, but the leadership skills, you saw I was going to call it soft skills, the leadership, the hard skills that we bring as managers, as leaders, to make sure our team members understand what they are doing, that they are best positioned for their roles, for their tasks, the moving of the chess pieces, if you will, when we see, there's an opportunity to go over here, and we pivot and we look at the bigger picture and we go bird's eye view, and then we go narrow, and then we go wide and narrow. We figure it out. We're always looking across these dimensions. That is the power of a manager. Now, I say this because I want us all as leaders to use our own discernment when we're thinking about what kinds of things we should automate or not. And I'm going to do another episode around kind of the problem-solving checklist that I run through with teams when I'm consulting with teams or working with folks how do we know what to automate? Because it's not everything, but it's not nothing either. There's so much power to these tools. So we want to use them the right way. But it's about understanding them. And so today we're talking about what are these examples of leadership skills that really can't be automated. And then again, I'll talk next time about really where we can utilize them and some of the great tools that are out there. Now, let me share another example of a design leader, right? So working with a lot of my career in tech was in design, program management, and operations. And design leader that would sit down with the team and observe, okay, well, where are they getting stuck when it comes to tools? What are some of the issues with communication across, design and engineering and product? Where can we really make sure design has a bigger seat at the table? In the tech industry, it's engineering driven, is no surprise. And so how do we ensure that we are communicating in a way that gets folks on board, excited, and ensures that everyone is really positioned in the right way, right? That is another leadership skill that you really can't replace with automation. Now, things that would have made that easier would be having automated meeting notes and cascading of information, right? Those are things that could have really streamlined that workflow, because connecting the dots around communication can be a challenge. Maybe there's some sort of, use of ideation tools to say hey, here's a couple options we have, now blow out a bunch of ideas for this, right? But it wasn't removing the communication pieces. And so that's really my point here is the communication and all of the connective tissue to influence people, to get people aligned and on board, to hold people accountable, to make them feel seen and recognized. That's the stuff that we really don't want to replace. And no one's asking us to replace that, right? So it goes back to what problem we're solving, because that's not the issue. And I want you to think about what leaders that you have worked with throughout your career that really, really embody the qualities that you want to emulate as a leader. How did they communicate? How did they show up? A big one is, how did they manage their own reactivity and responses and dealing with change and uncertainty? How did they show up when they didn't have all the answers? These are the things that you really want to lean into, because these are the qualities that keep you relevant, that keep your job necessary. The more we're leaning into that, the more we are removing this, is this necessary? Should we automate it, right? It's when you pull away from those things and you are drowning in work because you're not delegating, you're not managing your time, and all you have space for is, well, I got to get the task list out there. At least that's happening. If you're leaning only in skills and in tasks that can be automated, you are actually putting your job at risk by choice. And I know that it is not easy to delegate. I know it's not easy to take a step back and look at your calendar and think like, okay, like here's some things team members can take on, but I gotta get them up to speed and delegate it and figure out what the handoffs are, the decisions. That is something that can take a little bit of time. It's not necessarily in one 15-minute conversation. That is future-proofing yourself. So it's really important that we are always building these skills around, I said it already, communication, collaboration, conflict management, recognition. How are we understanding all of the different people on our team and what their strengths are and how to best position them and put them in front of the right people and in front of the right opportunities? How are we motivating our team members even when there's all this stuff going on, everyone's frustrated, right? And we can't pay them more. What are we doing? This is all the stuff I talk about in the new Manager Playbook book, because those are the skills that withstand the test of time. And that's the stuff that I hope we are re-energized around. We feel more empowered and we get support if it's not our strength. So if you feel like, well, I get really uncomfortable when there's a conflict or when someone gets defensive when I'm giving feedback, like who doesn't get uncomfortable when someone's defensive? Sure. That is an opportunity to develop a skill there, to flex those muscles, to strengthen those muscles, to get better at it. It's really hard to give difficult feedback to someone. Hey, this is like, I was looking at my episodes from, the past couple of years. I'm like, I had like 25 episodes on feedback because it is the hardest thing. Feedback is something that, sure, we can, utilize AI to understand like, hey, what are some different ways I can say that? But it is not going to know what the response is on the other end. Any AI is never going to be able to predict what your team member will say. So that is a competency you want to develop. How do you recognize when a team member was really, really dialed in and motivated, and then when stuff started to shift and their whole energy's off, even if they have the same output? That's what you as a human is understanding and diagnosing. Okay, so these are the skills, again, we want to be building, cultivating, developing, really strengthening in ourselves and across our teams. And if you're overseeing managers and managers of managers and things like that, this is where we really, really want to focus development. This is where we really want to make sure folks are highly competent, are feeling confident about it, are able to, because this stuff is very, very scary. A lot of people in teams, in companies, hear AI and they start wondering like, gosh, how long do I have? So it's on you to be developing these skills so you can bridge this transition. That's really, really part of the job. So again, that's why I'm going to start to talk about this on the podcast all the time so that you feel equipped. You have the new tools you need. You have literally the new Manager Playbook for dealing with all of this technology. All right. So the first thing we want to do is understand what are the skills and to be having a clear path for how we are going to be developing those. Okay. So I cannot wait to support you on this. And I mean, we can all get there. We can all do this together. It's a lot is changing. Okay. So let's all say a lot's changing. I'm going to do my role, which is to become versed in it. And I'm also going to build these leadership skills because those are going to keep me relevant. All right. See you next time.